transition before October, and so we're going to have an intense summer here focused on the budget stuff. In addition to priority-based budgeting, we're changing budget tools. So we're going from our LBP tool to our Questica tool. That's going to be another significant change for us. And so we're really going to need your help almost all summer to make these changes, and hopefully it'll make our work easier. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Liz. Liz is a consultant for priority-based budgeting, and she's going to lead us through the webinar, and I'll let her introduce her team. So I'm hoping our audio-visual is up and going. Liz, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me okay?
I think so.
Okay.
Yep.
And are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Well,
all right, Liz, take it away.
Great. Thank you all for being here this morning. I think main goals for today are simply to provide a little more information about the endeavor you're embarking on for the rest of the summer. I plan to walk through the high-level basics of priority-based budgeting in this PBB101 presentation. And then, like Nick said, we'll have some exercises for you guys to continue to work on and to think about PBB over the next couple of weeks. And then I have several colleagues on the line today, Chris Fabian, our founder and CEO, and then Steve Seaman, who will also be coming on site with me in a few weeks. So we'll, team effort for you guys, team effort for us, and we're really excited to be kicking this off with Lee's Summit. I will be going through a set of slides, and I will pause and ask if there are any questions, but please, let Nick know if you have a question, and then we'll hopefully have some time at the end as well. Okay, so what is priority-based budgeting? We typically introduce priority-based budgeting as 3 questions, and these 3 questions are, what do we do, what does it cost, and why are we in business? The what do we do piece is the program part of your priority-based budgeting process. So you are going to be switching from a line item budget to a program-based budget, and these programs tell the story of your city. So they're going to tell the story of your department specifically, and then as an organization as a whole. What does it cost? We're going to allocate the line items from your budget to these programs that you identify. So we're going to take your personnel and allocate those by percentage of time spent, and we're going to take your operating costs and allocate those to programs by dollars spent. And why are we in business? We're going to go through a process of identifying results that connect the programs that you have now allocated costs to the mission or strategic plan of your city. To go into a little bit further detail, programs are telling the story of your organization, and this is going to be the services that are offered by your department and then the organization as a whole. These programs are bigger than tasks, but they're also smaller than a department or a division. So we're going to help you go through the process of identifying those programs to the right level. These programs are going to be divided into 2 distinct areas. One is the community program. These are going to be programs that serve the community. And then we also want to recognize those programs that are needed to run the organization. So these are going to be the governance programs or internally facing programs. The programs that you identify are going to help to create transparency. They're going to help you have discussions and provide comparisons, looking for partnerships, plan for changes in the workforce, and clarify context of performance and metrics. These are just some example programs that exist in our database over to the side, but you'll see you can begin to really understand what it is that an organization is providing by the identification of these programs. The line items, so we are going to take your personnel and operating line items and allocate all of those to your programs. This is going to be helpful as you get into decision making and communicating your budget. Makes it much easier to communicate and much more transparent. Questions that you will be able to ask and answer following the allocation of costs is to really think about where you spend your time and where your staff is spending their time. What programs seem much larger than you had anticipated? And to really think about what programs are charging a fee for service or have some piece of them covered by a grant, and is that, are you doing that in the most efficient way? We will take costs and allocate personnel by percentage of time spent and your operating costs by dollar amount. And then the third question that ties the priorities of your city to the programs through the creation of results. We, in addition to the City of Lee's Summit specific results, we introduce 5 basic program attributes that come from ResourceX. These 5 attributes are mandate, reliance, demand, population served, and cost recovery. We offer these as a way to further describe your programs. We're going to go through a scoring or evaluation process where all of the programs that you create will be evaluated against the set of results that you've identified and the basic program attributes that ResourceX provides. Through the utilization of the results, you'll be able to identify the priorities that are specific to your organization and determine the alignment that your programs have to each one of those priorities. Some questions that can be asked during this process: what programs would you want to increase a service level to? So what programs are in really high alignment with your priorities? If you had new or found resources, would you want to allocate those to those programs that are in higher alignment? Where could you potentially reallocate resources from? Where could you free up some time or funds to apply to something that's in higher alignment to your priorities? You can also begin to look at where the majority of the budget is being spent. Do you see a significant amount being spent towards one specific priority? Then utilizing the basic program attributes, these are helpful to further describe those programs utilizing the 5 questions. So are you required to offer the program? Is there a higher level of mandate? Are you the only provider of the service, or is there a potential for a partnership? Has there been an increase in demand over time or a decrease in demand? Do you receive any special revenue specifically for your program, so fees for services or grants? And who benefits from the program? So what portion of the population is served by each program? Now, we've talked about what is priority-based budgeting, and now let's talk about why you're going through this process. So priority-based budgeting is a recognized best practice from GFOA, ICMA, and Alliance for Innovation. What we're going to work to do is to create a new data set that will open up opportunities to help you achieve the goals that are in highest alignment with the priorities of your city. PBB is a budget communication tool. It's looking at your budget through the lens of programs and then a prioritization of those services that you offer. Why use PBB? It gives you the opportunity to identify those services that you are currently providing, to understand the cost of providing those services, then to link decisions to the priorities that have been established for your city, and to help identify opportunities based on knowing those costs and knowing how they tie in with your priorities. Utilizing PBB as a decision-making tool, we have this step-by-step process to help you answer and ask those questions. So, do you have new needs? What options do you have to accomplish those new needs? Can you free up and reallocate resources from those programs that already exist? Could you generate new revenue? How would you look at these 2 opportunities? Looking at sourcing, efficiencies, changing service levels to free up and reallocate resources. On the generating new revenue side, can you look at the fees that you're charging? Can you explore grants that might assist in providing the program? And as a last resort, looking at the taxes and rates that apply. As a communication tool, PBB provides you the opportunity to not only view your budget from a new perspective through the lens of programs, but to actually visualize your budget in this present site. So you'll see on each of these that there are boxes that are color-coded. The boxes tie to the amount of budget that's allocated to a program, and the shading shows how in alignment they are with those specific priorities. So it's just a very clear-cut, transparent way to share this information within your organization, and if you so choose, to the constituents of your city. Okay, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper to each section. So starting with the program inventory and telling your story, this is the backbone of priority-based budgeting. Identifying the programs that your department offers is going to be one of the most important pieces of this puzzle that we're getting ready to start. So questions to ask that will help to identify programs. Simply, what is it that you do? Listing out those services that you provide, and then describing them so that others within your organization and outside of your organization understand what it is that you do. Who do those services benefit? Are they external facing or community, or are they internal facing or governance? Thinking about what is unique to the City of Lee's Summit. What is it that you do that's unique to your department or to your city? Then thinking about those questions, do we have to provide the service? Are we mandated to do this? Or is it simply something we've always done and we could review that? Are there grants or fees for service? This will help you to identify a program that you probably need to have in your inventory, is if you're charging a fee for it or there's a grant that you are receiving to cover that. Just to kind of hammer it home, we have two different program types. Governance programs are internal facing. Examples from our database: budget preparation, payroll, building services contracts. Those that are external facing, we call community programs. These, some examples: police patrol, snow removal, playground maintenance. And then moving on into the cost allocation phase of PBB implementation. Being able to start to ask those questions of where you spend your time and where others are spending their time and what the cost of that translates to the total program cost. So how are we going to do this? So we're going to have a program inventory that you all are going to create, and we have your costs uploaded into our online tools. We're going to take those costs and allocate them to the programs. We're going to start with your personnel. So we'll start with positions and allocate those by percentage of time spent on each program. We have a best practice of allocating in multiples of 5%. We'll get into much more detail on this in future presentations, but just so you can begin to understand that you are going to be thinking about your time on, and it will always add up to 100%, no matter if you're part-time or full-time. We're allocating 100% of your time to the programs in your department. We provide a little bit of help with this chart, so thinking about how you spend your day, your week, your month, trying to identify the total of time spent in a percentage. We're shooting for, if you're spending less than 5% of your time on a program, that may be at a task level, and we may want to think about combining that with something else. On the flip side, if you're spending 50 to 60% of your time on one program, are we getting the full story, or should we break that program into two so that we can better understand how you're spending your time? So this highlighted portion is kind of the sweet spot that we're shooting for. There will be exceptions, but that will be, this will be a chart that we'll use as we go through the costing when I'm on site. Once we have finished allocating personnel, we're going to switch over and begin allocating your expenses by dollar amount. We always recommend that you allocate directly to the programs that you feel those funds support. And then we do have some helpful ways to help spread those remaining costs, but direct allocation is always the preferable step. Okay, moving on to question number 3. Why are we in business? Communicating the mission of Lee's Summit. So we will work with the super user team to identify those priorities or results that we will evaluate programs against. This will help us to determine the alignment of the programs and answer that question, why are we in business and what programs are serving our priorities best? There are some steps involved in scoring. The first is scoring against those results that are unique to the City of Lee's Summit. Second, we will score those programs against the basic program attributes to further describe those programs. And then finally, we're going to take all of that information and apply that to a final score that will help determine the overall alignment. Just like we have 2 types of programs, community and governance, we have 2 types of results. This is to ensure that the programs are scored in the fairest and most appropriate way. So we'll take those community programs and score those against the community results, and the governance programs will be scored against governance results. The basic program attributes are helpful in describing all programs. So basic program attributes, all programs in your inventory are scored against those. Okay, I thought we're getting ready to jump over into introducing the exercise that you all are going to be participating in over the next couple of weeks. But I thought this might be a good time to stop and see if there are any questions about the overall process.
Go ahead, Steve. So you talked about identifying revenues or fees that are associated with the programs. What if, will there be an opportunity for us to suggest that there could be user fees or revenues that haven't been used for specific programs? Where would be the appropriate time to introduce that kind of thing?
And Nick, if you could help me a little bit, I caught some of that, but not all of it.
So, Liz, the question is, we currently have a revenue structure, but we think that through this process, there might be an opportunity to identify new revenues or new sources of funds, fees. How can we work to incorporate those new items in as we develop the programs?
So I think the best way for us to approach that is to think when we start scoring against the BPAs, we're going to ask the question, the very simple question, is there cost recovery? Yes or no? And so those programs will be identified as programs that currently have a revenue stream and those that don't. And we will then take that information and we will ask the question, is there potential for cost recovery? So I think to answer the question when you're identifying your programs, if you believe that there is potential for revenue, I would identify that and then we'll score it as it exists now, knowing that we can then ask the question, how could we generate a revenue stream?
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Any other questions? I think we're okay to move on to program inventory building.
Okay, so this is the exciting stuff. This is where you guys are going to begin to take PBB and make it your own. So I'm very excited to get this kicked off. For all of you in the room, you will be participating in this program inventory builder. So what is the program inventory builder? This is a tool that was created to assist you in your program inventory identification. What will you receive to do this? So there is a shared Dropbox that I will be providing to Nick following this meeting that he will then share with you. But each one of you will have a macro-enabled Excel workbook that is going to take you through 10 tabs asking you questions to help you create your program inventory. So you will, following or at the end of this process, you will have an initial program inventory that we would love to have in our tools to review and discuss when we get on site on June 25th. So now I'm going to just walk you through the 10 steps, and hopefully there will be questions, and hopefully there will be good answers. But the first question is, what do departments like yours do? So we have a database of programs that other organizations use. Just to let you know, I'm using the fire department as my example today. But in the first tab of your program builder is going to be inventory that exists in our database. So you can go through here and just see if any of these programs spark any kind of reaction for you, that you offer something similar to this. And you will simply put an X in the column, I want to use this program, and then it will translate into future tabs. But if you see something that you think you offer, even if you don't want to use the exact name, you can put an X in that column. So each one of you will have a workbook with a department that is related to your department. And just a quick reminder to please enable macros so that all of these functions work. This is tab 2. So you'll see I pulled programs from the starter inventory over to this second tab by clicking the button in the middle. So that button will pull everything from tab 1 over to tab 2. Then you'll have that list of other organizations' inventories at the bottom. And what I'm going to ask that you do on this tab is to really think about the top 10 services your department offers. So using the list below as a guide, I want you to create the 10 services you provide and populate that blue table at the top. So just thinking through at the highest level, what are the 10 things that your department offers? If you don't have 10, that's okay. But I would really like, for those larger departments, it's going to be difficult, but I'd like you to think of the 10 services that you offer. Tab 3 is going to pull those 10 into the top level of this table. Now I want you to think about those 10 services and at what level you would want to make decisions. So getting more specific at this level. So the detail that you can provide underneath, for instance, equipment maintenance. That is program 9 on this particular example. So equipment maintenance. For a fire department, I imagine that we need to get into a little bit more detail there. So listing out those things that you think, or the program names where you would want to make decisions. And you would just fill in the lines below those top 10 services. This will pull over into tab 4. And I want you to begin to think how you spend your time. So just putting an X in the column of those programs where you spend your time. This is a great opportunity if you missed something on previous tabs to just go ahead and enter in an empty line a program that you forgot about on the earlier tabs. But as you think about how you spend your time, you realize that you wanted to add it. The next tab is thinking about how staff members spend their time. Have you identified all the programs that they spend their time on? And it's okay on this tab, add a program on this tab that you forgot on the previous tabs, and it will continue to pull forward. But just putting an X next to those programs that your staff spends time on. Moving on, just beginning to think about the community versus governance side of things. So who does this program serve? Is it an external facing program or is it an internal facing program? We're just working to build your inventory so that when we get ready to upload these to the tools, you're going to have an inventory ready for upload and ready for review. So the 7th tab is looking at who else in the organization contributes to the programs you've identified. So what other departments are going to want to allocate time to your programs? So that's going to be the first orange column. The second orange column is to think about programs that may exist organization-wide. So recruitment and training, hiring and onboarding, budget development and management, those are things that probably every department plays a part in or does for their own department. So thinking kind of more globally, what are those programs? Versus something like special events, where I'm sure parks plays a part, public works, fire, police. So who else might allocate to a special events program? The 8th tab is this revenue or cost recovery tab. So thinking again, are there programs that you charge a fee for? Are there programs that you have a grant that covers it? Want to make sure that we get all of those listed here. So again, if you've forgotten a program, simply add it in an available spot and it will be carried forward. And then what programs are you mandated by a higher level of government to provide? Just to make sure that we don't forget those programs that we may not always love offering, but we have to. So we're going to include those on this list. And if you've forgotten one, again, you can add it under that program name column. And then tab 10. This is going to be where we take a look at those programs that we've identified, do kind of that review, gut check, are these the right programs for my department? And then to provide a description. So the programs are the very most important piece of a priority-based budget. We not only need for you to understand the programs that you provide as a department, but we need other departments within the organization to understand what it is that you're providing. So what your program is and what it does. And then as we get into scoring and communicating the information, having good program descriptions is going to be invaluable. So on this last tab, simply describing the programs that you have identified. Just 10 little steps, that's all. Okay, so things that I will be doing for you and need from you. So each department is going to get a department-specific workbook. It's going to be in a shared Dropbox folder. Within that Dropbox folder, there are also 3 examples. So I went through and did an example for fire and finance and police. So you can go through and just see the process that I went through for those. Then I go and review your budget data, consider what it is that your department provides. Then begin the process of going through this workbook. I'm asking that you have it saved back to the Dropbox by Wednesday, June 19th. I will be on site on the 25th. And so, being able to have these in the tools for you to interact with them in our online PBB, I think will be very helpful and exciting for the on-site. So I'm going to work to get those uploaded prior to my arrival. And then we will spend the entire morning of our first day on site working with you to answer questions about your inventories, to review them, to make sure that it makes sense as we move into costing. So don't feel like this workbook is to help you identify those programs, but we will be continuing the conversation and continuing to work on it together during the on-site. Okay, questions about building your program inventories?
Yes, Michael.
At what point that you build the program inventory, do we need to consider programs and services that we don't offer that we may need to begin offering?
Liz, did you hear that question?
I'm sorry, I did not.
So the question is, we currently have programs that we provide, but how do we incorporate programs that we might want to add in the future?
So programs that you might want to add, I think go ahead and get them in this list. I think that it's important that you consider those things. However, when we get to the cost allocation phase, you're going to find that those programs, if you're not currently spending time on them or you're not allocating resources to them, I do think it's important for you to consider that and keep that in mind for the future. But I think as far as we're not going to allocate costs to a program that you're not currently providing. And I'm not sure that you will want to go through the process of scoring that program during this first round. However, I do think keeping those and really thinking about how you might want to reallocate resources within your department in order to make a new program possible is really exciting and wonderful that you're thinking of that already.
Question. Any others? Brian?
I have one, and for the fire department being, our structure is very fluid, not structured as far as our day-to-day activities. How do you allocate time for those types of services?
So Liz, the question is, kind of the example being the fire department, where the day-to-day activities are fluid and change. How do you allocate time to something that's so fluid, programs that are fluid?
So I think, typically for a fire department or a police department where you may have a significant number of people who, under their job title, have similar functions. So let's just use, fire prevention or fire suppression, and how many people within that department do that, but maybe don't do that on a daily basis. We're trying to get a best estimate of how your staff spends their time over the course of the year. So thinking about if you have 25 firefighters and they participate in fire prevention, fire suppression, fire investigations, looking back and really considering your best estimation of how that breakdown falls. In addition to that, making sure that some of those fluid programs that maybe don't happen on a daily basis. So I know in Lee Summit, for instance, you all have a school education program within the fire department. And that may only happen 1 week out of the year, but it may be really, really important to the fire department that you do that. So to make sure that those programs, even kind of breaking that 5% rule, which I just gave you, and now I'm already breaking it, but making sure that those things that are important and are listed in your program inventory, and just doing your best to identify which positions contribute to that, what resources go to that, even if it's not a consistent daily activity.
Thanks, Liz.
Sure.
Got Joe?
Yeah, so with parks, I know we're getting a 50,000-foot level view of this, but it seems pretty daunting to me at the moment. We have 6 funds. We have hundreds and hundreds of programs. We have 60% of our revenues generated through fees and charges. I'm interested in knowing how much time does she think we would really need to allocate in the next 2 weeks to be where we need to be for them to arrive. It seems like it's going to be quite a time-consuming task.
Liz, did you get that question?
I did. And okay. I think for parks, we had discussed a little bit yesterday whether it made sense to identify programs at the department level or at some level down. So I think it's function or division for you all. And it may make more sense for a department of your size with that many programs to break it out to the next level below the overarching Parks and Recreation Department. As far as identifying those programs, we are not trying to create 100 programs within the Parks Department. So we're going to try to think about things one level up potentially, so that if you have community centers, thinking about what level of detail, what is it that you want to know about those community centers? You probably don't need to know how every single class offered at a community center is going to score, but it may be that you want to know how youth programs at a community center wants to score. So really, it will be a time-consuming process to think about your programs, but I think, come as best prepared as you can for the onsite, and think about thinking about where you want to be able to make those decisions as we get into cost allocating, and think about at what level you want them scored.
Thanks, Liz. Steve?
Finishing remarks. Questions.
Okay. Any other questions? So, just as a matter of process, I think from following this meeting, Chris and I will kind of be your contacts. Ask that we have a kind of a quick turnaround June 19th to get the program inventory builders done. We want to help be a resource for you on that effort. I know it's a lot of work, and so that we can keep kind of all of our data and all of our materials straight. Ask that you kind of coordinate your program submissions or your program inventory builder submissions, coordinate through Chris or myself, and we can make sure that we're all squared away with Liz. If you have, I would suggest maybe departmental meetings where, as a department, you can kind of go through the program inventory builder tool. We would certainly love to sit in on those with you if that's possible. So that we can also know from a kind of a super user group how each department's stepping through it. So if you want assistance in setting something up, please let us know. We're here to help. Definitely want to be a resource for you. So I don't have any other questions. Steve wants to make some comments. So
as a word saying on the screen, thank you. And I just very quickly, and so you all can get your day, I want to tell you how grateful I am that you're here today and that you cared enough to be involved in this. And I'm also very grateful that we as a city are in a position where we can be, I'll use the term progressive, that we can actually be a progressive community, and we can be thinking about how we reframe our conversation with ourselves and with our community and with our leadership when it comes to financial decisions. This is something that I'll just kind of paraphrase at a master's class, a master's level of an organization has to do. This is not undergraduate work. This is work that is done at a much higher level, and you have to have a top level group of professionals that are doing it. A couple of good things that happened last night. We had our public hearing on our operational budget, and it appeared to receive favorable remarks and comments by our council, and it had its first reading with unanimous approval. The second and final reading will be on June 11th. So it looks like we're on our way of having a budget that we can start beginning to work on for next year. Second point of that, we had conversations about, and we know this, and this process will allude to this as well, is that we know that we have current needs. We all are very driven to do the best that we can for serving others, whether it's internally with each other or with this community. And I am grateful to be a part of an organization where you all want to do more, and that you're challenging us and saying, we can do better than what we're doing, but it does take some resources. And so this process will help us in making sure that we're prioritizing and that we are giving the very best that we can to the things that are most important for us to serve this community. And then finally, we have two council members here. We got Councilmember Bob Johnson, who will be our chair of the Finance and Budget Committee next year. And then we have Councilmember Fred tomorrow. You be on the Budget Committee as well? No, you unfortunate thing. I know. Okay. I'm glad. So anyway, I'm very appreciative. These people represent our partnership, and they're a very important link to our success. And we invited them to be here because we want them to help communicate what this is about and to make sure that we make them a part of this priority-based budgeting as well. And so I'll be working with Chairman Johnson with the Finance and Budget Committee to make sure they have a general understanding of it. And Chairman Johnson, do you have any comments about this PBB?
No, it's just, I know we had a presentation many months ago, and I was impressed with the concept and where it had been adopted in other communities. And I hadn't heard much. Now I'm glad we're back and considering this again. But please remember, on your first comments you made, there are political subdivisions have some functions that I think need to be provided to a community. I'm not always going to fees and charges and everything.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of have to provide fire protection.
Yeah. Well, I think this will be a great opportunity for that very, it's a conversation of what is the role of the city and what is expected of the city and what is a part of like the general property tax and the sales tax and those things. And then there are those things that may not be the basic core of the city, but are things that help improve the quality of life for the city. And then you have to ask the question, should the general taxpayer be paying for those additional costs? Especially, I like that part where they said, we're going to measure what population is benefits from this program, from this service. So there's going to be this combination. And we'll pick on the ambulances. So I hope that none of you ever have to use an ambulance in the rest of your life here. And some of you may never have to use an ambulance. But I think, and I hope I'm one of those people, but I have no problem whatsoever knowing that some of my property taxes is going to pay for a service that hopefully I never use, because I have the benefit of it being available in case I ever do use it or need it. And so there's that balance, that conversation of, okay, so maybe not 100% of the population benefits from ambulance services, but 100% of the population benefits from it being available to us. Now, roads are a little different. I think most of us got on a road today to get here. I don't think we have hovercrafts yet. So, so roads, it seems a little more clear cut. Everybody has to go on a road. So you kind of think, well, do we really want to start doing fees for every person that drives on the road? Not yet. So it's going to be a really good conversation. I know that we're not supposed to use the word fund when we talk about budgeting, but I think if you guys can just be with us, and I'll say you have permission to be a student of government. So I know you have your position as a budget tech or whatever title that you have, but maybe you can use this as an opportunity. You chose to be a part of government because you wanted to be in public service. This could be an opportunity for all of us to be students of how government works and to really have a great conversation about how we use the resources. So don't worry, Councilman Johnson, I won't have a fee for everything we do.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Anyway, it's gonna be good. I just wanted to tell you, I'm grateful that you're here. I'm looking forward to what we're going to do together. Thank you to our two council members that are here. And I think that we might have Mayor Pro Tem Lopez is going to try to observe this by webinar. Yeah. And we'll send him a test and a quiz. We'll see if he really did. So, thank you. Can we release him?
Yep.
Okay. See you soon.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you all, and see you in a couple weeks.
See you soon.
So we will get working on this.